when you build your critical mass, when you spend less than you earn, that's the difference, and then as you get compounded growth, you reinvest for even more compounded growth, which will walk you through, you're going to eventually get an amount of money that's enough that without working, the interest on that money alone in a secure environment will give you the income so you never have to work again. Then you have a money machine. How many be up for this process? Say aye. That's different than you have X amount of assets on your net worth, which by the way can change how fast? How fast? If the marketplace changes what they feel about real estate, if they change what they feel about the companies you've invested in, how fast can all that change? How fast? In a heartbeat. The valuation of the dollar, or the pound, or the mark, or the euro, or anything else can change how fast? How many like the idea of building a money machine? Say aye. This is the only reason to invest. You invest for one reason, so you have an income for life without working. And to do that, you got to build a critical mass of capital, that the interest on it alone will give you that income, and you can have the life you want without working. And the only way to do that is do those first two steps. Spend less than you earn, invest it, reinvest it till you hit that critical mass. And we're going to show you ways to accelerate that, make it happen. That's the entire financial game in one paragraph or one thought. So everybody here's goal is, here's what you want to say. I am building a money machine. And its purpose is to give me income for life without working. Hallelujah. How many feel hallelujah on that one? Say aye. Now, how to do that is actually a lot simpler than you think. We make things more complex than it really is. You got to think of this as your target. Now, by the way, you know whether you're on the path of financial freedom or financial independence or not by, can you answer, are you doing the first part? Are you spending less than you earn? And are you investing it? And are you doing the second part? Are you reinvesting and getting compounded growth? And are you moving towards that critical mass that'll get you free? And do you even know what that number is? If it's a general giant number and you keep moving the number, you'll never get there. We have to define, this is what it is. So think of this as the bottom line. In order to achieve what you want, where you have a money machine, here's what you must do. You must pick out a minimum financial goal for yourself. Even to achieve your minimum financial goal, you got to pick out a specific amount of money that you're going to invest every month, every year, no matter what. A specific percentage of your income. If you don't do that, forget the rest of this course. It's a waste of your time. Because you'll go make a bunch of money, but you won't be practicing the fundamentals, and eventually you'll make a mistake and you'll lose it. How many follow what I'm talking about here? Say aye. If you're going to change things, you really need to put yourself in a position where you say, this is what I want to invest. This percentage of my income, where you pay the investments first before you pay all the other bills. Because if you pay the investments first and you keep doing it, it's a pure discipline. And by the way, the best way to do this that I know of is to have that money taken straight out of your account as soon as it gets there. Many of you know you can do it automatically. You can put it in a money market and then decide where to put it. But it literally leaves your account, the money is transferred. Think about this. Success in life comes from good judgment. When you make good decisions, you do well. In your relationships, in your body, with your family, and with your finances, with everything. How many agree with me on this? Say aye. So if success in life comes from good judgment and good decisions, good judgment often comes from experience. And experience often comes from bad judgment. The secret, that's why we come back to the 80% of psychology, is when you make the mistake and you go, oh my God, my numbers came down, I'm not making progress, instead of going, I can never get there, it's redoubling your efforts. And I'll give you, very often it helps to have a role model, as this man pointed. So I was with Michael Milken shortly after he got out of prison. Now Michael Milken was the junk bond dealer who made billions of dollars for himself and other people during the 1980s. He funded Ted Turner, gave Ted Turner a start. You know, there were all kinds of companies in the 80s that really got their start, all primarily because of this man, Michael Milken. But he also did some things that put him in jail. By the way, in jail, how wealthy do you think he felt? Not very. Now, he was able to keep a significant amount of money. He paid fines, he gave up a period of his life, and he got out of jail, and then he developed something called cancer. So what good's the money? So he spent his life starting to figure out how to change, and even though he had a lot of money, he felt like he was starting over in terms of his identity, his respect in the community, the way people look at him. So he began to try to figure out how to do good works, but he was really feeling defeated till he met an interesting guy, a guy named Carl Eller. Because I asked him, at the point I was talking to Michael, later on, I had a lunch with him one time, and he actually wanted to have me put one of my companies into his group and get a piece of it, but the deal wasn't the right deal for me. And I was actually looking back on it, it's been a long time now, it was the right choice not to do it, even though he was a very bright man. But he had the experience, and I had the company and the money. And I realized that I worked out at least that particular investment. I thought it through, and I made, fortunately, an intelligent choice. I had to move forward. But what I got out of that meeting was worth more than the investment we could have made together. What I got out of that meeting was a role model that I'd like to give you, and it still guides me. And this man, Carl Eller, was his role model. And I said, well, tell me, what's so special about Carl Eller? He said, well, let me give you his history. In 1952, Carl Eller was a man who got involved in outdoor advertising. A young man, he went to work for a company, and as he did this, he worked there for about 10 years at a particular company. Then about 10 years later, 1962, he found himself in a position where he had learned enough and had enough compounded life experience. Does this make sense? 10 years, working for somebody else, learning the business, learning to make intelligent choices, that he said, you know what, I'm gonna get a little money, I'm gonna leverage it, and I'm gonna buy my own little company in the outdoor advertising business. And he did that in Arizona. So he buys a little company, outdoor advertising, and he calls it Eller Advertising or Eller Outdoor, if I remember correctly. What happens next? Well, he takes the next 6 years of his life, roughly, and he builds that company up. And about 6 years later, he builds it up enough that now, all of a sudden, he looks at his life and says, I can merge this and get more value. I can work with someone else. I can see what those guys did at the company I worked for. They didn't just do things, they merged with other companies. So he follows the model he learned. And so sure enough, he merges with a local radio and television station there in Arizona. And the value of that company, which was called CCC, grew immensely. So sure enough, he takes another 10 years. So imagine now he's been running this company 6 years on his own. He's got 16, 17 years into this now. Do you think you can compound things over 17 years if you make intelligent choices and you're smart? Yes or no? Do you think all the decisions he made were good ones? Yes or no? Did everything he do make money? Yes or no? He failed at many things, but he had the psychology that he learned from everything. And if it didn't work, he said, that's experience, I'm gonna learn from it, make a better decision. So over the next 16, 17 years, he basically moves into the position where all of a sudden he's in the place where this company has some real value, and he sells it with his partners to Gannett, the people that own USA Today, a really large firm. 1980, he becomes chairman of Columbia Pictures. And in a short period of time, from 1980 to 1983, taking what he's learned from the advertising business, he grows Columbia Pictures, and he helps them to merge with Coca-Cola. So by 1983, picture this. This man has been working his entire life, right? 52, he got in advertising, it's 83. How many years there, guys? Basically 30 years, right? 3 decades. As long as I've been doing what I've been doing, that's how long the gentleman was who accumulated for himself $70 million just by investing in other people's stuff, not even having to do it. You don't have to be a great entrepreneur to make money. You can invest in a great entrepreneur. You know, you can look over at somebody like Bill Gates and say, I'm gonna own a piece of him. Let him be the creative one. I don't have to work all around the clock, let him. There's a lot of ways to get wealthier, a lot easier than just running your own business, and many of us love running our own businesses. This man was good at running his businesses. So by 1983, he's accumulated a net worth of $500 million. 30 years, $500 million. How many think that's pretty good? Say, ah. And by the way, $500 million in 1983. 83 was, decades ago. What's that worth today? I don't know, but probably certainly spending power worth more than $1 billion, that's for sure. So he's got $500 million. So what's he gonna do? At this stage, he's, at that stage, I think he was 55 roughly, somewhere in that range, mid-50s. And so he says, well, I got all this money, but I don't have to what? I don't have to. And so he does them for a while, but it makes him crazy. It's like, I gotta do something with my life, have some meaning. You can only lie on so many beaches, you can only drink so many daiquiris. I wanna do something productive. So he comes up with this idea that he's gonna take over a company called Circle K. Circle K is a company at that stage that's doing about $700 million in sales. He goes in and partners and he puts up a chunk of his money, in fact, virtually all of his money to make this deal happen. But he thinks, I'm gonna turn this thing around. And guess what? He does. He turned Circle K in roughly 5 or 6 years into the second largest convenience store in the world behind 7-Eleven. Second largest in the world. It's got like 4,500 stores in the United States, about 1,500 overseas in like 100 countries, just an amazing growth record. He takes the company from 700 million in gross sales to over 3.5 billion in gross sales in that short period of time. So now we're really looking really good, wouldn't you say? We're in the early 1990s now. right? He's done this for 6 or 7 years. He's built this incredible piece, and in 2 years, the entire company reverses its fortunes and goes bankrupt, and he loses $500 million, everything he's accumulated in 37 years. And he's 62 years old. And he has nothing. He not only has nothing, he owes $100 million at 62. He went from up 500 million to down 100 million. How many of you ever have thought you were in bad financial trouble and it wasn't that bad? Say aye. So you thought, oh, I lost my job, or I lost my income, or my investment went terrible, or the house I bought is not worth as much, or I bought the stock and I lost it, or, I went through a divorce and it was terrible and I lost that. Trust me, this makes anything anybody in this room's ever experienced look like nothing. Now, what do you do when you're 62 years old, you work for roughly almost 40 years of your life, you're up 500 million, everybody respects you, your name is well known, and now you're a total failure or you own $100 million. 99.9% of the planet would go bankrupt, obviously. But he decided there was still time. What was that? Mechanics or psychology, my friends? What did I tell you? 80% of financial freedom, financial independence, and all of wealth is 20% is. He said, I still have time. At 62, he had the guts to say, all I got to do, I got to get some money, right? I got time, I got to get into compounding again, and I got to make better choices, which at this stage will not be difficult. Well, I made some bad choices here. What took me almost 40 years to develop, I lost in roughly 3 years, 2.5, 3 years. But if I could lose in 2.5, 3 years, I didn't lose the 38 years or 39 years or 37 years or 40 years of what I learned, who I am. So he didn't say, I'm starting over. That was the difference in his psychology. He said, I'm going back to what I know. And at 63, he went back to Phoenix, Arizona, and leveraged everything he could possibly get a hold of and got people to invest, and he bought a small outdoor advertising company. And started over, but he didn't call it that. He said, I'm going back to what I know, where I can make more intelligent choices. And so what happens? In less than 5 years, he builds that little company up and he compounds it in 25 cities, and he builds himself to where at the age of 68 years old, 4.5 years later, actually almost 69 at that stage, if I remember correctly, he now is a billionaire again. He sold his company to, what was the company's name? Clear Channel. He sold his company to Clear Channel and became a billionaire in less than 5 years. He was never a billionaire after 40 years. Now, this would be a lesson in one thing, mechanics or psychology. Which one? Psychology. But it's also a lesson in the next most important mechanic you better know. Because everybody's going to make some bad choices, and some of them could cost you seemingly everything. Or you may even make a conscious choice. You're going to change something, and making a change in a relationship can cost you much more than half of what you have, depending on how your life is structured financially. But it may be worth it. How do you not be destroyed by that? You got to have psychology, but you also want to avoid it. If he was going to be here today, and you're going to ask him, besides your psychology, what was the biggest mistake you made? Your psychology made you well, but what was the biggest mistake you'd make? He would say one thing to you, and I want you to hear it now, and every one of you have heard this, but you may have heard it cognitively, you may have understand it intellectually, but you don't associate enough emotion to it because you're not maximizing it. My guess is if you're in this room. You could do more. How many agree you could do more in just about anything that matters? Say aye. And that's called asset allocation. He said the mistake he made was asset allocation. And I'm going to show you this now. This is not sexy. This is not completely new for someone sophisticated, but you better make it new for yourself right now. When you're green, you grow. When you're ripe, you rot. You got to get green back on asset allocation. Because what happens is you get to be a sophisticated investor is you tend to look at where can I put my money where I get the largest what? Say it again, what? And that's the biggest mistake you're going to make in your life. It's counterintuitive, but asset allocation is the single most important decision you're going to make in your financial future. You screw this up, you can do everything else I said well and end up empty financially. Not unwealthy if you stay associated to your psychological strength, but you certainly are not going to be financially free. And this is the mistake he made, asset allocation. What does it mean? It means Every person in this room is going to make the wrong decisions financially at times. You're going to get the best advice. You're going to study the past. The history shows that the market is going like this, or the real estate market is going like this, or gold is going like this, or something is going like this. It keeps growing and growing, and you feel like you're missing out if you don't get in. How many felt that recently in some financial valuation of something? Say aye. And so sure enough, you get this piece in you and the fear starts to happen. You don't want to miss out. And everybody's telling you it's the right thing. And it looks like the right thing. And everything should be the right thing. And your timing is wrong. Can you do the right thing at the wrong time? Yes or no? Let me tell you another secret to life. If you do the right thing at the wrong time, you get pain. If you plant in the winter, I don't care how hard you work. I don't care if you work day and night and you work to the bone and you plant your seeds in the middle of the winter. What's going to happen when fall comes? Are you going to be rewarded? Yes or no? No. So if you don't understand that the seasons are changing, you're in trouble. But even if you do everything right, you can think it's springtime, can't you? And be wrong. So how do we protect ourselves? The answer is asset allocation. This is the secret you must give yourself. And all of you, I can promise you, in 2 days, will forget what I'm saying right now. Because in 2 days, many of you will be making momentum investments, and there'll be somebody in this room who made $3,000 in the last 4 hours because they're going to make a trade, and someone else will make $100, someone else will make $500, but someone else is going to lose $1,000 or $500. And what most people are going to focus on is the person that made $3,000 and go, I'm going to put all my money in this momentum investment where I could make this 10% return today, 20% today. Who knows what I'm talking about here? Say aye. And every part of you goes, that's how I get my money machine. I want to get compounded interest. I want to get the best return I possibly can. And so you put all your money in there, and the worst thing that can happen to you is like when you go to Vegas. What's the worst thing that can happen when you go to Vegas? You win. It's the worst thing that can pop. How many know what I'm talking about here? Say aye. When I was a kid, I was not into throwing my money away because I had so little. And I was not into gambling. It's like I wanted to give it, share it, do something fun, do something that would make people light up. I ended up going to Vegas with some friends of mine. And they went in, and they all bet. I said, I'm just going to enjoy going to the shows, hanging out with you guys. I'm going to watch. I'm not going to bet. I was like very extreme the other side. So what I do, I sat there and watched. And I didn't bet anything till the last day. And the last day I thought, well, I'll play a little bit of blackjack. I mean, it's easy. It's pretty simple. You can kind of anticipate the numbers. There's some logic to it. You rationalize the whole thing. And I played blackjack, and I won $1,800 when that was like, I started out with $300. That'll give you a perspective. That was like an unbelievable amount of money. Worst thing that could ever happen. Because then once you get that jackpot, what are you always thinking? I'm going to get it again. And that's how they make money in Vegas, because they've set up the compounding on their side. Right? They know what the ratio of results are, and all they got to do is get you to keep doing this, and the house is going to win because the house has the economic advantage. The longer you go, the greater chance you're going to do it. Even if you do it here, you're going to come back. You're going to be desired. That's how they can pay for a building like Steve Wynn has that's, what, $2.9 billion to build a hotel. It was the most expensive hotel in the world. Now it's not. They're building a new one for $3.6 billion for a hotel. How can you afford that? You have large margins and profits. And where does that come from? People who got the big hit. So the worst thing can happen is you make investments and you hit a home run. And you hit a home run. And the home run gets you to start thinking you're really smart. And maybe you are really smart. You're very sophisticated. Maybe you really are. But there is a day when the whole game changes. And it's really difficult sometimes to predict that, sometimes impossible. True or false? So the asset allocation is how you protect it. What is asset allocation? It means out of the money you have to invest, we're going to create 3 buckets. Really simple way of thinking of this from now on. 3 buckets. And these 3 buckets are going to help you to understand whatever amount of money you're going to invest each year, where you're going to put it. So for example, if you don't spend less than you earn, you're going to have nothing to invest. If you spend less than you earn, now you have something to invest, right? Do you need to come up with a specific number, a percentage, or a dollar that you're going to invest every month, every year if you're going to get to your money machine? Yes or no? Yes, yes or no? Where are you going to put that money? Whether it's $100, $1,000, $10,000, $100,000 a year, $1 million a year, $1 million a month, doesn't matter. Where you're going to put it, if you're smart, is you're going to put these 3 buckets of asset allocation. What are the 3 buckets? The first bucket is the security bucket. When you think about investing, think of 2 types of investments. There are fixed income investments, and most of you are clear what this means. What does it mean when it's a fixed income investment? Who knows? What does that mean? You got a guaranteed rate of return, assuming they deliver. And anyone cannot deliver, including the US government. They haven't not delivered, but they could. Is there risk in any investment, yes or no? So just ratios of risk. And as we know, no risk, no reward. So if you don't invest, you're gonna lose if you invest at times. But if you don't invest, you've already lost and you can never win, never have a money machine, never be financially free. So fixed income investments, the types of investments you're gonna make where there's a guaranteed return. A bond. A company gives you a bond. What is a bond? They're guaranteeing you give me your money, I will deliver at this time, at this date, this percentage return to you. So it's fairly what? Secure. Less what? Risky. We all understand this. The second type of investment that you can make, and it helps you understand what you're going to do, is something that's going to be growth driven. And growth investments are investments where you probably have a much greater potential for growth, which means you get a greater return if you're successful. But if you're not successful, do you have a guaranteed rate of return, yes or no? No, so in a growth investment, you have the potential of greater return, but also greater loss. There is no guarantee in a growth investment. No matter how long it's been going that way, there's no guarantee. We start to get the illusion that it's going to always go up. It isn't necessarily. So where do you put your money if you think of things that are more secure versus not? The security bucket is where you want to put investments that are secure by their nature. Because they're secure, is this going to give you a huge compounded return per year, yes or no? But can it give you a huge compounded return even if the number is small if you do it long enough, yes or no? So what we want to do is your first investments have to be in your security bucket, and everybody wants to do the opposite. Because why would you want to go put some money in something you're getting 5%, 6%, 7%, maybe 8% on, when you could go do something else that you believe you can make 20% on? Because the 5, 6, 7% is totally guaranteed by that promise, by that government, by that company, by whatever the situation may be. And if you screw up in your growth investments, you've got how much? Zero. What did this man Eller do? He put everything in his growth bucket. How many follow what I'm talking about right now? He went, why would I put money in my security bucket? I got $500 million. I can do all these different things. If I put all of it here, I can leverage up and make, his goal was to make $1 billion, right? Instead of losing $500 million and being $100 million in debt, he ended up losing $600 million total. But he thought, if I put it in there, I don't need to put things in my security bucket. Now you might say, well, it all worked out well for him. How many Ellers are there in the world? Most people, when they face financial, what looks like ruin, they say it's over. I can't start over again at 40 or 50 or 60, much less 63. Very few people will do that. And even if he did, he also had to make some good choices and probably got a little bit of luck. And you get really lucky when you work for 50 years, your guts out, right? And you won't give up, and you'll persist, and you have this incredible psychology, and you figure out how to add value. But most people wouldn't recover from that. If there's anything he'd do, he'd have been worth billions of dollars and wouldn't have had all that stress if all he'd done is put a percentage in a security bucket. The question then becomes, what percentage you put in your security bucket, what goes in there? Well, here's some things that go in there. If you don't have at least 2 to 6 months worth of cash that covers your overhead, you're in deep trouble. And today, it's amazing. People with enormous incomes spend most of it, they don't have 6 months worth of cash on the side. And if something happened where they lost their job, or something happened where the economy got hit, or a terrorist attack occurred, and everything got locked up, they'd be in deep doo-doo. How many know what I'm talking about here? Say aye. The first step to getting financially secure, not financially independent, is to make sure you got enough cash that if something happens, you can go for 6 months. You got the freedom. Now, who here already has this set aside for your life? Raise your hand. Fantastic. Give these people a hand, by the way, big hand for that. Oh, come on, give them a big hand. You're like, yeah, easy for you, you brat. This has got to be a basic financial goal. Now, nobody wants to do that because it's not sexy. And you're saying, I could be using that money for compounded growth, Tony. Yes, and you could not be compounding, you could lose, and then you're starting with nothing. How many follow me on this? Say aye. How much of that should go in there? 2 to 6 months, a year, depends on your psychology. But whatever's going to make you feel secure, it's individual for every person. I'm not going to tell you you should put 6 months in. Maybe 2 months is fine for you. Maybe for some of you, you want a year in there, right? It's different for everybody. This is where you got to start to know the truth of who you are, not what you project. And some people are more certainty driven, more security driven than other people. Some people need to have a little more security drive right now in order to keep their life balanced. What else might you put in there? Types of investments. An IRA goes in here, right? Pretty secure. Insurance. The insurance is protecting you. That's part of security. What else could go in there? Your home. Don't think of your home as an investment. Because for most of you, you're eventually not going to sell that home and eat it. You're not going to sell your home and get income off it. Now, some of you maybe, you made a stage of life where you're accumulating the same homes, and eventually you're going to sell and buy a smaller home and take that critical mass that came from selling the big home, and it's going to take care of you for life. If you're doing that, great. But the place to think about your home in terms of leverage, put it in your security bucket. How many agree with me on this, by the way? Say aye. Because, by the way, if you don't have a home, you're going to be really stressed out, right? So I got to think of my growth outside my home, really. Think of your compound interest outside your home. Your home may be a bonus for you. And fixed income investments all fit in this category. Now, what's the second bucket? Second bucket is growth. 2 ways you're going to learn about growth. The buy and hold strategy, which is the strategy of an owner. And by the way, that buying and holding, that is less risky to some extent than momentum because of the timing. But it can be just as risky. What is momentum trading? That's when you're no longer an owner, you're a trader. A financial trader, everybody's a financial trader. Most of you trading time for your money. Here you're trading money for money. Here what you're looking at is you're seeing movement in prices that may or may not have anything to do with value. Can a price change just based on perception of a company, yes or no? Can perception change the price or the value of real estate, yes or no? A little or completely? But very often, there's a fluctuation that can come from an event, from a perception, and what a momentum player is doing is they're playing for the short term usually. They're in and out when that fluctuation happens. They're betting on the up or the down, because as momentum players, I want you to understand something. Everything we're going to teach you will work in a bull market or a bear market. It would be irresponsible to teach you a set of principles that are based on a market only being bull, because right now in the country you live in, it's a bull market in real estate or stocks or gold or silver or whatever it is. That's irresponsible. You want to be able to make money no matter what happens in the market. How many excited about this, by the way? Say aye. But even if you get brilliant, even if you do it, can your timing be wrong? Yes or no? Yes. Can you be totally smart and make the wrong decision? Yes or no? So what is going to protect you so you milk your money machine no matter what, and when it's time and you don't want to work, you're going to get there? What bucket's going to protect you? It grows slowly and it grows like the grass. So how much should we put in our security? And by the way, you say, well, what's the third bucket, Tony? Well, there's the security bucket where we put our money first. Second bucket, growth bucket, we put our money second, and we put a percentage in there all the time. Third bucket is the dream bucket. The dream bucket is you want to travel around the world. The dream bucket is you, depending upon the size of how you think or what you're doing or your economics, you want to own a condominium in Aspen. And if Aspen seems insane at $2,000 a square foot, then you might say, I want one in Mammoth, or I want one in Chile, I want someplace else. Many times you get the same thing or better quality just by changing location because of perception. And it isn't any better or worse. You're trying to get financially free and real critical mass so that you can live forever in your own home in Los Angeles, or you move to Portland, Oregon. Portland, Oregon's greener, richer, probably not going to be the first place bombed in a terrorist attack, right? Could you have as good or greater quality of life for a third or fourth the price, yes or no? Yes. So sometimes you can get to your goal quicker just by changing locations, changing your perception of where you need to be, breaking your own pattern, okay? So security bucket gets full, growth bucket, but what's the dream bucket? The dream bucket might be a second home, it might be the boat, it might be a trip, it might be owning a basketball team, owning an island, depends on the size of what it is you want to do. And by the way, bigger isn't better. The more you have to feel financially free, the more stress you're going to have. How many follow this? It's the opposite of what you think. The more you have, the more you got to manage, the more time, the more energy, the more risk, the more capital. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Some of you are very, very driven to create and risk. That's a personality type. We know that it's crazy. I happen to be one of those types to some extent. But even a crazy person's got to make sure their security's there, or their craziness at one point will bite them. How many follow? If you can get financially free for less, do it. Be wealthy now and get financially free quicker. And then lock in, you won. And then keep that stuff in your security bucket. And if you want to play a bigger game now, you've already won, and everything you're playing now, that's where the house is money. You can go for something bigger, and if it doesn't work out, you're still handled. Your security, what you're here for, is totally free. How many follow what I'm talking about here? Say aye. Now, how do we decide to fill these up? Well, your stage of life plays a role. So in your security area, if you're really getting started here and you don't have the security there, if you're really conservative, you probably need to put 40% of your investment capital there. 40% so you're totally protected. If you're more aggressive, maybe 30%. By the way, which one of these three buckets do most people try to fill first? 1, 2, or 3? Three. And how do they do it? Borrow, money. And what they buy usually isn't a real asset. It breaks down in value. The car, the secondary home in an environment that the market changed, whatever it is. They don't usually make money on it long term. They usually lose money. And then they have no financial freedom. So they got to go work. I'm wealthy, I'm happy, I have love, I have all these things. Nothing wrong with that, but why not have both? What do you think the second one is to be filled for most people? What's the second one? Quick. Growth. They go for growth because why? I want a bigger what? Return. But a bigger return potential brings with it greater what? Risk. You absolutely want to fill your growth bucket, just make your security bucket the first one because it's the one you want to fill least and it's the one that'll protect you. You want to learn from Carl. You don't want to wake up and say, I'm starting over. You don't want to have to use that psychology. Great if you could, but use that along the way when you make mistakes, not when you lose everything. That's what Carl will tell you. If Carl was here to support you right now, he would say to you, listen to this man. Listen to him. I know it's boring sounding right now. I know it's not exciting, but this is your life. Spend less than you earn. Invest the difference. Reinvest for compounded interest, but do it in these three buckets and do it in the first two first. Here's how I do it. Pick your percentage. Don't vary when you get a better opportunity. So if you're going to invest $1,000 a month, $10,000 a year, what are you going to do with it? You're going to say 4 of that's going to my security bucket, 6 of that's going to my growth. And after the next few days, you're going to decide how much of that's buy and hold, how much of that is momentum, where you're going to put that. Is it going to be in real estate buy and hold? Is that going to be in companies? You're going to break it up. But you keep the percentage because otherwise someone will offer you a deal. And when that deal comes up and you see the opportunity, what are you going to say? I need to get more, so I'm going to take from my security bucket and do it, and that's when you get bit. I know I sound like I'm lecturing to you. I'll tell you why. Do you know how many people I've taught this to? The millions of people over the years that I've shared this with. And you know how few people really hear me? They hear me right now. But the minute their greed gets hit, the minute they go, oh my God, I got this giant return, they douse this. So if this feels heavy, that's okay with me. If this doesn't feel sexy, that's okay with me. But remember what I'm telling you. What is the secret long term? What's the most important decision you're going to make in your investment life? Say it again, So right now, so this goes from conversation to reality, I want to ask you this. What percentage of your current investments are in completely secure environments? If the answer is 0, this is the first thing you got to do. You can still do great opportunities, but that percentage has got to start building security first, a percentage of it. And again, that number depends on your risk tolerance, and it depends, secondly, on where you are on stage of life. If you're older, do you need to put more in security or less? Which one? Quick. More, because you have less time to make up for a mistake. If you're younger, you can put a little less, but don't put nothing. And if you become more wealthy, you know what's interesting? The richer you think and feel, the more abundant you seem to become, because that feeling starts to affect the way you make decisions. They're not made from fear, they're made from gratitude. And when you operate from gratitude, and you're coming from a generous place within yourself and other people, it attracts a different experience. You know what's crazy in my life today? Today, people come up to me every day of my life, no exaggeration. If I'm in the public, if I'm in a restaurant, and because I've had, 50 million people get my books and tapes around the earth, no matter where I go in the world, people don't come up and tell me these great stories, but someone will come over to me and they'll say, they just paid for your dinner or your lunch or whatever, or they want to buy this. And I always say, no. They go, no, they insist. I'm saying, no, I'll go and say, thank you, I really appreciate it, but thank you, I appreciate the gift of wanting to do it, but please let me take care of this. No. I'm thinking, where were these people when I was broke at Denny's? And where were they when I needed them? When you're rich, everybody wants to buy you lunch and dinner. When you're successful and wealthy, everybody wants to do for you. When you're not, ironically, no one wants to do a squat for you. Except the few people that feel sorry for you or want to be generous in some way, but the majority don't. It's ironic. The more successful, the more happy, the more healthy, the more wealthy you become, you get momentum. And other people are attracted to you. Deals, opportunities, experiences. So 80%, I've said it a million times because I want you to get it in your body, is this association. So will you give everybody a hand for this day for starters? Everybody a hand for this day. Amazing.
Now that you have learned what it takes to create long-term financial success, take 5 minutes to think about how you can build your own money machine. 1. Are you spending less than you earn and then investing the difference? What are 2 to 3 actions you can take to save more so you can in turn invest more? Could you cut back on going out to eat? Cooking more dinner at home? Or bringing your lunch to work? Renegotiate costly plans such as for your cell phone or cable? Or meet with a tax advisor? Are you taking advantage of all the opportunities available to you in your tax bracket? 2. What is the ideal asset allocation for you? How would you allocate the extra money saved within your 3 buckets: security, growth, and dream? Why is this the right choice for you?